Hello everyone and welcome to the session on Kotlin and Spring Made for each other. My name is Pulkit and here is a bit about me. So currently I'm working for To The New as a senior software engineer. I have over 5 years of experience in Spring and Java and I'm passionate about delivering knowledge sharing sessions. Below is my link, slides.com, Pulkit Pushkarna. You can find all my presentations there. Okay, so let's start this session with the definition of Spring. So Spring Framework is based on the principle of inversion of control, which is a technique that externalizes the creation and management of component dependencies. And basically, Spring acts like a container, and it provides you instances with all its dependencies. And any resource which is managed by Spring is known as a bean. Okay, so a bit about Kotlin now. So Kotlin is a cross-platform, statically typed, general-purpose language with the type inference, and Kotlin is designed to interoperate with Java. Okay, so let's get started with our demos now. So we're gonna use Spring Boot in order to proceed with the demos. So the most easiest way of creating a Spring Boot application is to go on Start Spring IO, select Gradle, Kotlin, the most stable version of Spring, and then just hit Generate Project. Okay, so I have already done that. So now, what we're going to do here is we're going to write an example in Java of dependency injection, and then we're going to write the same example in Kotlin. Okay, so let's get started now. So let's create an interface, and we're going to say it's hot drink. And it has an abstract method, which is prepare drink. Okay, cool. So now we're going to create another class, which is T, and it implements the hot drink. So now let's implement the method here. And it says sout preparing tea. So now let's have one more class, and we're gonna call it express tea. It also implements the hot drink. And we're gonna implement the method here. Okay, so here we're going to say sout and preparing express tea. Okay, cool. So now let's create another class. We're going to say it's restaurant. And let's have instance variable of type hot drink here. We're going to have a constructor for it, and then we're going to have a getter method. Okay, so now in this instance variable, I can assign the value of both t and and both express t because it's of type hot drink. So I'm gonna create a Java config file first. So I'm gonna say Java config. I'm gonna mark it with @configuration, and then I'm gonna create the bean of type t here, which returns the object of t. Okay, cool. So now let's create a bean of class restaurant. So this method actually takes an argument of type hot drink, and we're going to say return new restaurant, and we're going to pass the hot drink here. Okay, so what Spring will going to do here is it will, while executing this method, it will look whether there is a bean which is of type hot drink. Yes, there is a bean t. So it will going to assign the value of t here, and it initializes the restaurant method. Okay, so now let's try to access this restaurant bean. So this is the Kotlin file, and the run application method here returns the context. So I'm going to say val and the context. So now I'm going to get the restaurant bean, so I'll say context.getBean, then I'll say restaurant, : class.java. So here I've got the bean of restaurant. So now I'm going to say restaurant.hotdrink.preparedrink. So now let's execute this piece of code. So here we have got preparing tea. So you will notice that I'm using hot drink here in the Kotlin. So we are doing interoperation here because this hot drink gets translated to the, actually if I make it private, and then I'll give it a try again. So it gets translated to the get hot drink method. So we have done the auto wiring, and I've showed you the example of dependency injection here. So what if I make another bean which is of type express t? So now this will gonna return the express t. Okay, so this is the case of ambiguity here, because now Spring will not know which bean is to be auto-wired, so we can easily resolve it by giving the name here. We're gonna say its name is hot drink. So now the name matches with the instance variable of restaurant. So now it will gonna auto-wire express t and not t. So now let's try to execute this piece of code and see what is the output. Okay, so preparing express t, cool. So there is another way. If you want to give the priority to the bean, you can say @primary. So in spite of looking for the name, now it will see that in case of ambiguity, if some bean is marked with the annotation primary, then it should be auto-wired. So again, in this case, t will be auto-wired. So let's execute it. Okay, so it's saying preparing t. Okay, so we have created the dependency example in Java. So how do we do it in Kotlin? So in order to get started with Kotlin, and we need to perform certain steps. So the very first step is that we're gonna create a Kotlin file, and here we're gonna define a method which is beans, and it will gonna return beans, which is nothing but a definition, a bean definition DSL for Kotlin. So basically here in this curly braces, I will gonna define all my beans in Kotlin. And other than that, I also have to do one thing. I need to create a Kotlin class. I'm gonna call it bean initializer. And it will gonna implement application context initializer. So you can use colon and not implements in case of Kotlin. So here in the generics, I will gonna pass generic application context. It will ask me to implement one method. So let's implement that method here. Okay, so in that method, I will gonna say beans dot initialize, and then I will gonna pass the application context here. And because this is only one line of code here, so I'm gonna say equals to, and I will remove the curly braces from here. So actually this beans method is returning the bean definition DSL, which has a method initialize, and we are passing the generic application context to it. So now one more thing which you need to do is in the application.properties file, you have to enable this property, context initializer classes, and you have to specify, okay, where is your bean initializer? Cool, so now we are ready for making the beans in Kotlin. So now we have created this class restaurant. So how will we write this same class in Kotlin? So let's create another class, and in Kotlin, we're gonna say it is restaurant K. Okay, so we need to define the hot drink and the constructor and the getter. So here I will not need curly braces. I'll need the parentheses, and I'll say val hot drink and hot drink. Okay, so now this piece of code is equivalent to this code in Java, because now this piece of code will create an instance variable for me, a constructor which accepts one argument of type hot drink, and the getter for me. So as you can already see, the code is very, very concise in case of Kotlin. So now how do I create the instance? I will create the bean of restaurant K class in the Kotlin way. So here I'm gonna say bean, and I'm gonna say restaurant K. That's it. So we have created a bean of restaurant K here. So now let's create a bean of type T. So here is the bean of type T. So how do the auto-wire takes place here? So actually, while creating the bean of class restaurant K, Spring will look, is there any constructor which takes the argument of type of any other bean? So yes, there is a constructor which takes the type hot drink, and this type of bean is already there, and we're calling it bean T. So it will gonna auto-wire automatically. So now the thing is, let's change restaurant to restaurant K here. So now let's execute this piece of code. Okay, so we are getting preparing T here. So as you can already compare that the conciseness and the cleanness of the Kotlin here, because we have given the definition of the proper methods here, but here we are just calling one method's bean. So now let's introduce one more bean here, which is express T. Okay, so now the thing is, again, there is a case of ambiguity. So in order to solve this ambiguity, we're going to provide the name here, and I'm going to say this is of the name is hot drink. So if I go to the beans method, you will see that it's taking a number of arguments. But here I'm invoking this method by only passing the one argument. The thing is, the default value for every parameter is null. So I'm only using the parameter which is of my use. So I'm just saying, okay, name equals hot drink. So this is another feature. This is one of the another feature of Kotlin which makes me very productive, because in case of Java, I have to pass nulls everywhere here. So now let's do one thing. Let's execute this piece of code. So here I'm preparing express T. So now the thing is, in the Java config, we have also done one thing. We have mentioned @primary here. So here what we can do is we can say is primary true. So is primary is again one of the methods which takes the Boolean argument. So here we have told that in case of ambiguity, you need to choose this T bean instead of express T. So now let's try to execute it again. Okay, so here I'm getting prepare T. So as we can compare that in case of Kotlin, it was only one liner to create the restaurant K class. But in case of Java, I need to write very much code as compared to Kotlin. And in case of bean definition, you will again see that bean's definition in case of Kotlin is really simple as compared to the Java config. Okay, so now let's move to our slide deck and see what all we have covered. So we have created loosely coupled components, restaurant and T, and then we have defined a Java configuration where we created the bean of type express T and the restaurant. And then we have defined the 3 steps which we need in order to get started with the Groovy Bean DSLs. So basically, we have defined a function with Groovy Bean DSL, and we had a beans initializer method, which we have used in order to initialize our bean definition DSL, and we have specified this property in application.properties to locate our beans initializer. Okay, so this was the full-fledged Java config class, and this is the Kotlin class. So as we can compare, that the code in the Kotlin config, it becomes much more concise. So now let's take another example. And here I will gonna create another class, complex. So in this class, I will gonna have a list. And then I will gonna have a set. Hash map. And here I will gonna add one of the value, map dot put 1, and the value is 1. Okay, so here I'll pass the third argument, which is map. Okay, so we have able to define the bean here, and as you can see, this code is really mess here. Okay, I think I am making, okay. Okay, the semicolon is there. Okay, cool. So I'm able to create this complex bean, and you can see it's quite a mess here. But if I want to create the same kind of bean in case of Kotlin, I can say complex K. And then here I can get rid of the parent, I can get rid of the curly braces, and I can say val list colon, and I'm gonna say list of integers, and then I'm gonna say val set, I'm gonna say set of integers, and the third instance variable will be of type map. I'm gonna say map int and string. Okay, cool. So we were able to create this class in Kotlin very conveniently. And another thing is now we need the toString method. So we can make it a data class. So data class will gonna provide me the toString hash code and the equal method. So now let's initialize this bean in the Kotlin, in the beans.kt. So here we're gonna say bean. And then we're gonna use the curly braces, and then in order to create the object of complex, I will gonna say complex K. And then the first argument will be list of, the second argument will gonna be the set of, and the third argument will gonna be the map. So here I'm gonna pass 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna pass some random values here. Okay, so this was a piece of cake in case of Kotlin because I don't have to use the new keyword, which is very, very redundant in case of Java. And I have got this very convenient methods to create the list, set, and the map. So now let's go to our main class, and here we're gonna say complex K, and I'm getting the complex here. So let's say println complex. So now let's print it. Okay, so we have got all the values here. Okay, cool. So now let's move to our slide deck and let's see that we have created a complex class in Java, and then we have created the same complex class in Kotlin. And as you can see, the difference between the class which has been created in Java and the class which has been created in Kotlin. And we have also seen the way we have initialized this bean in case of Kotlin. It was very, very concise as compared to Java, where it became the mess. And so now let's move to our next section. So now we will gonna create a REST API. And this is another project which I have imported with Start Spring IO. So this is a web project, and we're gonna create a REST API from it. So I've shown you the one way of creating the beans in case of Kotlin. So if you don't need to make any another file and you want to make the beans here, so you can say here, Spring Application Builder, and then you will gonna say dot initializers, then sources, and then you will say run, and you will pass the arguments here. Okay, so in the initializers, I will gonna give the beans DSL. So this is the same bean DSL which we defined in the another class. In the sources, I will gonna say Spring Boot Web Application, class.java. Okay, cool. So I want to do something when my application starts. So I can do here by simply creating a bean of application runner, and then I will gonna say println application started. So now let's execute it. Okay, so we can see application started has been printed here. So now we will configure all our beans here, and we're not going to create a separate Kotlin file. So let's create an Hibernate persistence entity. So I have defined all the configurations of database already here. So now we're going to create an Hibernate persistence entity. So I'm going to create a Kotlin class. Okay, so here in the employee, I will gonna put the parentheses, and then I will say val id colon int, and the second parameter will be val name, which will be of type string, and the third instance variable will be val age colon int. So now this will gonna be a Hibernate entity, and the ID will be the very first instance variable. Okay, so we have successfully made the Hibernate entity here. Now we will gonna create a CRUD repository for this. So I will gonna say employee repository. Oh, sorry, it's a Java class. I need to do it in Kotlin. So let's create a Kotlin class, and we're gonna say it is an employee repository. So here I don't need this curly braces. I can simply say that you have to, actually it's an interface. You have to extend the CRUD repository, and the element type is employee, and its ID will be of type integer. Okay, so now we have created our employee repository. So when my application starts, I need to enter few employees in my database. So what I can do it, my employee repository bean is ready, so I can refer to the bean with the help of ref, And I can specify the bean here, employee repository. And I will gonna assign this to a variable. So first I will gonna check if there is no record in the employee, then you have to perform certain operation. So here I will gonna say a list of, and I will gonna create the employee. So I'm gonna say employee, then the parenthesis 1, name 1 would be the name. And let's set the age to 27. So now let's create another employee here. And we're gonna say 2, the name is 2, and the age is 28. So now we're gonna apply a for each on it. So here in case of parentheses, you have to pass the curly braces, and you will gonna say E, then arrow, then you will say employee repository dot save, and then you will gonna pass the E element. So now the thing is, if you just want to ignore this E syntax here, you can just remove it and you can use it here. So it here represents the object under execution right now. So in the first iteration, it is this first object has been assigned to it in the first iteration, and in the second iteration, this employee2 object has been assigned here. So here, with the help of this helper iterator, I can save the employee. So now I will gonna print how many employees I have saved in the database. So I will gonna say employees saved, and in case of Java, you will put a plus sign here, but here you will gonna say dollar, then the curly braces, then employee repository dot count. So now what you will gonna do here, you will gonna implement this method. So as you can see, total employees saved are 2. So now we're gonna create the REST API for this employee entity. So let's go to the Kotlin, let's select the class, and we're gonna say it's an employee controller. Okay, so here we're gonna inject the employee repository bean here. So I'm gonna say val employee repository, and this will gonna be a REST controller, which have the request mapping of /employee. And now I will gonna say the get mapping. So here I'm gonna define the function get employee. So employee repository dot find all, because there is only one line of code in the body, so I will use equals to here. So if I want to get employee as per the ID, then I can use the get mapping, and I will gonna in the parentheses I will say / curly braces and the ID, and here I will gonna say fun get employee by ID. And this ID will be passed here, so I can here specify that this is a path variable of type int. And here I will gonna say employee repository dot find by ID. So by ID, so this is the another helper method which has been provided to me. So now let's rerun this application so that we were able to hit the REST APIs which we have created. Okay, so application is up and running now. So let's go to our browser and let's say localhost 8080. Let's hit / employees. So as you can see, I have got the record of both the employees. And here, if I will say /1, I've got the record of the first employee and the second employee. So now let's create a custom finder in employee repository. So here I will gonna say curly braces fun, and I will gonna say find by name, and I'm gonna pass the name here. So I'm gonna say name is of type string, and it returns the employee. So now let's use this in our controller. So here I will gonna say @get mapping fun get by name, and here also I'm gonna say by name. So we're gonna get the name here. So name on string, and then we're gonna say employee repository dot find by name, and then we're gonna pass the name here. So now let's rerun this application. Okay, so now let's by name, and then we're going to say name equals to name1. Let's hit it so we have got the record of name1 and name2. Okay, so now let's go to our slide deck and see what all we have covered. So we were able to provide a bootstrap script for our Spring Boot application, and we were able to create the Hibernate entity and the employee repository here. And this is the bootstrap data which we created while saving all the employees in the database when my application is up and starting. So we have also introduced a custom finder here, and we have created the REST APIs very, very easily. So that's all for this session. In the end, I would like to say that the convention over configuration concept of Spring Boot, when it comes with the conciseness of the Kotlin, it becomes the deadly combination, and you can easily achieve more by writing less. Thank you so much, everyone.